So speaking of George Santos.
I was so happy. I was so hoping that you would take the top of this block. Please update us on George Santos.
George Santos. Well, first of all, there was some CNN reporting from his ex-boyfriend. You can go find, I think it was CNN. You go find that. That's some, if you want a little scandalous drama. His ex-boyfriend is appalled at his psychopathic lying. But over here in Washington, Santos has told Republicans, and you can put up the first one here, that he's going to voluntarily step off of the committee assignments. He was given 3 panels by Kevin McCarthy. Kevin McCarthy needed every single vote to become Speaker and did not want to hear word one about not seating George Santos or kicking George Santos out until he was through. He now has to govern. We talked earlier in the show, he needs George Santos's vote to kick Ilhan Omar off the Foreign Affairs Committee, which is rather incredible to think about, that you're going to have a member in good standing elected 3 times by her district, sent to Washington to be a voice for the people of Minneapolis, and George Santos is going to cast the tie-breaking vote to kick her off of the committee. Just utterly appalling. He said felt like his appearance there on these committees was a distraction, which maybe there would have been more ratings for them. I'd like to see George Santos kind of interrogating some of these guys, and then we also had. We could put the second one up here from Sahil, a poll from his district showing that basically everybody wants him to step down, except, what is it, 13%? Like some funny number of people who are like, no, I'm good with him.
13% say you shouldn't resign. 9% say they don't know.
That's me. If I were him, like, this is too entertaining.
Stick it out, man.
Yes, come on, this is good stuff.
Well, obviously he won a swing district, so Republicans are very hesitant to do anything that could damage them holding that seat, or that could jeopardize them holding that seat, especially with such a slim majority in Congress. Now, what continues to infuriate me about the story, and we talked about it last week, to your point about Ilhan Omar, is that, first of all, what did Republicans know about whether this man was qualified to hold office, whether he would completely embarrass his constituents, their party, and the whole embarrass and bring shame to the institution of Congress to the extent that it's still possible to do that? What did they know about that when they were doing their vulnerability studies? And why did Democrats not have the resources to come up with the Oppo research on this? And why did local media pay no attention to it? The owner, the publisher of a really small paper on Long Island said it was because everyone was distracted. He broke some stories about Santos before the election and said everyone else was sort of distracted by bigger races. Well, when you have paltry local media presence, that's what happens. And it's not what voters deserve, honestly. And the Santos voters should have had the appropriate information that we expect to have as voters, that you and I expect to have in front of us as voters, as journalists. You and I can't look into every member of Congress and every single story, and so we expect that other people are covering these bases in local races, et cetera, et cetera. People deserve to have that information before he was elected. And the big questions for me, when we're looking at the fact, I mean, the investigations into him, the fact that these are happening after this guy's elected to Congress, not during his campaign, or not before he even decides to become a public figure. I mean, this stuff is horrible. The FEC stuff makes sense that it's after the election because obviously it's campaign finance stuff. But he's now allegedly involved in this Harbor City Capital Ponzi scheme. Have you looked into this? The SEC is looking into it.
Shocking.
Have you heard about this?
A little bit, yeah. He's
like, the SEC is now asking people basically, what he told them when he was pitching them on Harbor City Capital, the campaign finance stuff that the FEC is looking into. This is a quote. This is from the Washington Post. Over the past 2 years, FEC analysts have repeatedly identified problems with Santos's filings with the regulator, sending multiple letters seeking clarification or correction of apparent issues, including accepting contributions beyond the allowable limit, omitting required donor information, and failing to fill out required forms to report details about the loans Santos claims to have made to his campaign. Right. Did he think he was going to win? I feel like he didn't even think he was going to win, so he just winged it.
Yeah, he doesn't seem like the kind of guy that has a long-term plan. It's just one lie after another to cover up the last one. And problems with its expenses, like people going through like his disbursements are just making absolutely no sense and not adding up. And again, to linger on the point again for a second, the House Republicans are going to vote because it'll be party line, I assume, unless Josh Gottheimer does something weird, will vote on whether or not Ilhan Omar should be booted off of the House Foreign Affairs Committee for her alleged anti-Semitism. The tie-breaking vote could be cast by a guy who got elected by saying that his grandmother died in the Holocaust and his mother died in the Twin Towers in 9/11.
Yeah.
And who faked being Jewish and then said, no, I meant that I was Jew-ish.
Right.
And he's going to cast the tie-breaking vote to kick Omar off the committee because of concerns around anti-Semitism.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
That's the situation that we find ourselves in right now.
You know, it is. And Republicans feel like if you talk to Freedom Caucus people, and even if you talk to, leadership people at this point, they were so exasperated by what happened after January 6th, the way Nancy Pelosi transformed the powers of leadership in Congress, and by the sort of escalation in media corruption and the media corruption, particularly as it pertains to Republicans and conservatives, have been so exasperated by it. They say, our voters want us to demonstrate raw political power right now. So George Santos might be a horrible human being, and we could probably all agree on that. Might be, maybe we can all agree on it. The evidence suggests he is, but he's a vote. And he's a vote to advance your interests. You saw this all the time over the conversation about Roy Moore, for instance. You had all these voters in Alabama. Everyone in Washington, D.C. was like, get this guy out of here. This is an embarrassment. But there are a lot of voters in Alabama, and this shows you where the Republican base is. Obviously, he ultimately lost, but there were a lot of people saying, we want to overturn Roe. We believe this is a matter of life and death in the same way that people on the left believe climate is a matter of urgent life and death. And that's, I think, speaks to the confluence of different emergencies that we're facing. Again, whether you're conservative or whether you're liberal, the stakes just feel incredibly high right now. And that's driving these sentiments among voters. And it's translating into our politics now, too, in that we're seeing leadership take the most overused word in politics, unprecedented steps in different directions and start breaking the norms, because all of the norms have been broken in the culture. People are just really fed up and they want raw political power. And I think in the case of Santos, it's really unfortunate. And Santos juxtaposed with Omar, the Omar question about alleged anti-Semitism, that is really important and really unfortunate and a sad statement on sort of where we are.
So, and that's why I think that Republicans probably won't force him out, although interesting to note that this decision came a day after he met with McCarthy.
Yeah.
He was asked, did McCarthy tell you to do this? Why do you ask George Santos anything?
Such a good point.
Such a good source of information.
Did you see he's been leaving out Dunkin' and Chick-fil-A for reporters?
Yeah, I did see that.
Did you take any of it?
No, have not gone by there yet, actually.
Would you have taken it?
You shouldn't, but I probably would.
You totally would have.
Yes, I probably would have. But real quickly, we can put up the second Sahil, the third element here. Santos voters say, this goes to your point, that Santos voters say 63% to 31%, I think this is a third element for the blog. So 1 out of 3 Santos voters look at what he's said since then and are like, yeah, I'd still vote for him. And I think those are probably the most rational ones in some ways.
Yeah, I agree.
Because they're the ones who are like,
principle.
Well, what do you want me to do? Vote for a Democrat?
Exactly, right. It's a matter of ideological consistency. And I think you can disagree with the ethics of actually taking that vote on the question of character, on the question of reliability and responsibility, et cetera, et cetera. But that's 100% where we are. The stakes are that high. I don't blame people for making that calculation in their own head. Even though I disagree with it, it's just hard to argue back. Again, I disagree with it, but it's hard to argue that people aren't coming from a legitimate place of desperation. And Santos is given where he's from in that district, there are probably a handful of sort of independent, there are probably a lot of independent, maybe some Democratic voters who cast their votes for him. Maybe they liked where he stood on cultural, social issues, which there's a lot of lies going on there. Yeah. There's a whole lot of stuff going on there.
Standing anywhere is like
Jewish.
Yes.
So anyway, it's just pathetic that none of this came out before, but hopefully some justice will be served now.
One last point on that. Cuomo gets some blame for this, and guess how? So because his conservative Democratic judges threw out the Democratic map that had gone through the commission and then kicked it over to some guy in Pittsburgh, a Republican in Pittsburgh, to like redraw it. That delayed the primaries in New York until, if you remember, like close to mid-September. Like
Interesting.
Really, really late. So you didn't know who the Republican candidate was until well after Labor Day.
Slim window for
Right, and now you're done with House races. Like you're done with that portion of House races at that point. But at that point, you're looking at control of the Senate. You'd still have time to vet a handful of them, but at that point, you're 9 weeks away from the election, or less.
That's a great point. I've forgotten about that.
So thanks, Cuomo. Yeah.
I'm always willing to thank Cuomo.
So Santos is Cuomo's fault.
Sounds good to me.
Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now, and Sagar and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us, and if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.